that every time I would read it, my heart would just, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? And then something happens, oh my gosh, why did that happen? That's why you're gonna read it with me next year. When was Jesus born? Last month of the year. Was it January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November? It was 25th day of December. It was last month of the year. Did I do all the months? I don't remember. Anyway, hey guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to Our Hearts Are Restless. My name is Alexis. So I'm very excited to show you next year's books that we'll be reading together. And this year it actually was so difficult to pick because there are only 12 months of the year. And I mean, unfortunately and fortunately, but it was very, very difficult to pick. There were, I think, about half of these I really wanted to read, and I was like, I need to read them now. And then half of them I was like, oh, maybe I should pick this other one that's on my shelf, or maybe this other one. And it wasn't until like about 5 minutes ago that I actually picked the whole list and put them in order because I'm just so indecisive. All right, so let's get started. This year, I actually picked about half to be novels and half nonfiction. And just because I think novels, they just can explain to you things in a way that is easier to digest sometimes than nonfiction. And I see this especially with fiction for children. Children can understand things so much better when it's within a story arc. And so I did pick five novels this year. All right, so we're going to start with January. Theology and Sanity by Frank Sheed. I have not read any Frank Sheed. I read bits and pieces of this, but I have not read it at all. So after having scanned the book a bit, it's kind of like a catechism for the layman. And it's very readable. And I believe it goes through all things, if not most of the things that most people have a hard time understanding in terms of theology or just don't know about. So we will be starting with this year to brush up a bit on our theology and keep our sanity, I guess. I hope that wasn't too cringy. Anyway, I don't know the name of this in English, but it's Journal et Pensées de chaque jour par Elisabeth Lezeur. Elisabeth Lezeur was a woman who lived in France, in Paris, I believe. It was actually Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen that talked about her one time, and that's how I know about her. And she was a very devout Catholic, and her husband was atheist. And all her life she would pray to God that her husband would convert. And I think at her deathbed, that's the story, she told her husband that he would convert, and he said, no, I won't. And he ended up becoming a Dominican friar after that, after going to Lourdes, I think, as well. Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen tells the story much better than I have. I think it's in one of his Your Life is Worth Living segments on TV, or, well, I mean, on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube, but it was on TV. I'm going to look for it. If I find it, I will put it in the description below so you can watch it. But it's basically her journal, bits from her journal about her life, and I'm about her husband. And yeah, there you go. February, Journal et Pensées de chaque jour d'Elisabeth Lezeur. The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene. This is the first novel that we will be reading in 2024. And it's about a priest. He's on the run because the state is trying to get all the priests and getting rid of... I can't speak today. I think I need coffee. All right. It's funny because it's actually decaf. Apart from the back, I haven't read much about it. I don't know if it has anything to do with the Cristeros, for example, the Christian martyrs in Mexico, if it's around the same time. So I have no idea. Sometimes I like picking books like that. I just know that this is well recommended, and Graham Greene is Catholic, and yeah, so we'll be reading this in March. Okay, this one's a little fun. I think so. This is The Quest for Shakespeare, The Bard of Avon, and the Church of Rome by Joseph Pierce. I have not read any Joseph Pierce, but this intrigued me a lot because I do love Shakespeare. I would actually, I haven't done it in a while, but I would open up my complete works and just read sonnets in front of my children from time to time. Like, I haven't done it in a while though. I should go back to doing that. His argument is that Shakespeare was a closeted Catholic, and closeted because he had to be to protect himself and his family. And so he presents all the arguments for that, why for sure Shakespeare was Catholic. And so this is very intriguing to me. May, we'll be reading Story of a Soul by Sainte Therese. I haven't read this either. It's my first time. See, a lot of these are firsts for me. And which is great. I like that. I like that I'm just discovering it with you. So these are manuscripts, autobiographical, of Sainte Thérèse de Lisieux, de l'Enfant Jésus, Sainte Thérèse de l'Enfant Jésus et de la Sainte Face. Apart from the few things that everybody knows about Sainte Thérèse, I don't know too much about her. And so I want to get to know more about her. And that's why I want to read this book this year. So, Histoire d'une âme, Sainte Thérèse, de l'Enfant Jésus et de la Sainte Face for May. The Wife of Pilate by Gertrude von Lefort. So Gertrude von Lefort, I was introduced to her when my husband one day gave me her book, The Eternal Woman. And that's one of my favorite books of all time. Every woman out there in the world has to read it. Men too. So it's 3 novellas. Gertrude von Lefort likes writing short books. The Wife of Pilate imagines the slow, arduous transformation of an aristocratic woman who is mentioned in the New Testament from a pagan into a Christian saint, as she is now honored in the Byzantine Church. Plus Ultra takes us into the high politics of early 16th century Europe and into the soul of a lonely young lady at court who knows she has attracted the intoxicating but dangerous attention of the Emperor Charles V himself. At the Gate of Heaven takes the clash between astronomical discoveries and the Roman Inquisition trial of Galileo as the backdrop for harrowing reflections about man's place in the cosmos. Very short, but if you've read Von Lefort, she's very intense and she is very poetic. And so don't be fooled by, the mere, it's not even 200 pages, but you're going to need time to read it. July. It's the big one. The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This has been on my list for so long. I've started and stopped, I think about 3 times. And I just couldn't go through it because there was always another book that was shorter or another book that I wanted to finish. And so this is going to be so much fun to read with you. And don't get me wrong, it's very good. From whatever, I think I've read like 50 pages of it. And I could keep going, you know what I mean? I think I just need that push, the extra pressure to keep going and not get distracted by other books. Yes, Fyodor Dostoevsky was not Catholic, he was Orthodox, but there's so much theology in here and talk about morality and what it's like to be human. And so this is why I want to read this. And like I said, fiction is one of the greatest ways, if not the greatest way, to learn about things and actually let those things seep into your mind through stories. So I'm so excited to read this. This is going to be July, okay? We're going to read it in the summer when we have more time, when we have all our kids at home, for those of us who don't homeschool, unfortunately. I mean, those of us who homeschool, for those of you who homeschool, have your kids all the time, but you know what I mean. August is Loss and Gain by John Henry Newman. It was John Henry Newman became a cardinal and a saint, and he was in the Anglican Church, and he converted to Catholicism. But he's known for the university book. I forgot the name. They're in Latin, and I forgot the names. This is a happier novel from from what I've read, about a man's search for faith, and it's a little happier. September. Okay, I've read this. It is 10 Ways to Destroy the Imagination of Your Child by Anthony Eslin. Finally, there's an Anthony Eslin book in the book club. I'm so excited to read this with you guys. It is so good. It is so funny, and basically after reading it, you will want to read more of his stuff, and also in general literature in general, and you'll just want to homeschool your children, which I can't because I live in France and it's basically illegal. I'm so happy for you guys who are in America, and Canada still, you can still homeschool your kids in Canada, right? Anyway, it's satirical, but it's so funny. And I think there's so many, it's just beautifully written too. And there's so many things like here. I cannot stress too much the wisdom of replacing the relationship of a mother and child with that of worker and client. The mother is a world of mystery. She loves. She does all kinds of interesting things throughout the house. She sings, she reads, she loses her temper. She may be as peaceful as a summer evening or a whirlwind of fury. But she is always the mother. And her love for her child, even when it is shot through all the flaws of her character, will be a human love. It may be far from perfect, but it will be something real. It's just so beautiful. I'm so excited to read this with you in September when your kids are back in school. Maybe you can rethink, putting them in public school, Catholic school, and just homeschooling them. Anyway, it's not about homeschooling, but it's about what it is to be human, the importance of the imagination and keeping that alive in your children. October. I've read this one. Kristin Lavransdatter by Sigrid Undset. I read this, so this is a trilogy, but I figured we'll just read book 1 because the trilogy is longer than Brothers Karamazov. So, but it's Sigrid Undset is so underrated, unknown. It's surprising. The first time I read her name was in Eternal Woman by Gertrude von Lefort, and I read her name again in this one by Anthony Eslin, and in many of his talks he's mentioned her name as well, I think. But she is so good. I'm in the middle of the trilogy, and it's because I don't want it to end. This book took me less than 3 days to finish because I just couldn't stop. It's one of those books. It's about Kristin Lavransdatter, the daughter of Lavrans. And it goes through her life. In the first book, let's just talk about the first book. You see her as a little girl, and you see her grow up to be a maid, and she's going to be betrothed to someone else, and there's a man that falls in love with her, but it's wrong, and I can't spoil that one. And then another man she falls in love with, that is really, really wrong and goes against her family, and she sins. It's such a good book. There's everything in it. Like, I'm looking at it with so much love. I just finished this 2 months ago, and I'm willing to read it again this year with you. That's how good it is. I'm just going to finish the trilogy. I don't want it to end, but it's one of those books that you need to know. It's about Kristin, and you see her in this book, The Wreath, from when she's a little girl up until she's a young adult and she's about to get married. And basically she falls in love with someone she shouldn't fall in love with. But it's not a chick book. It is not a chick book. It is not a chick book. Sigrid Undset knows how to write about men and women, and in a way that men and women can enjoy. This is a book for men and women. And you got to read it. You have to read it. Jane Austen's, not Jane Austen, what am I talking about? Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte was my favorite book. This topped it. I'm not even done the trilogy, and it topped it. So you have to read Kristin Lavransdatter with me. It's going to be, in October, late next year, but you have to read it. It's so good. And it's the only book, well, at least the only book in the longest time, that every time I would read it, my heart would just, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And then something happens. Oh my gosh, why did that happen? That's why you're going to read it with me next year. Anyway. November, Modern Saints by Anne Ball. This is just like an anthology of different saints and their lives and their faces, because there are photographs, which is nice, And since it's for the month of November, what a great month to read Modern Saints. And it just talks about their lives. It's very short. I think each saint takes about like 10 pages. So this is going to be a fun read, a nice read for the month of November. Voilà. And lastly, Prayer by Hans Urs von Balthasar. I read, what is it? More than that. I think about 50 pages of it. And it's one of those books I've struggled to keep going, just because, especially last year, since I had the book challenge as well. Well, this year. It's one of those books that really needs time. You need time to read it and not think about anything else. Not think about any books, other books except for this one. It goes really deep in prayer, into prayer. I'll give you an example. Firstly, prayer is a conversation between God and the soul, and secondly, a particular language is spoken, God's language. Prayer is dialogue, not man's monologue before God. Ultimately, in any case, there is no such thing as solitary speech. Speech implies reciprocity, and the exchange of thoughts and souls, unity in a common spirit, in a common possession, and sharing of the truth. Speech both demands and manifests in an I and a thou. The better a man learns to pray, the more deeply he finds that all his stammering is only an answer to God speaking to him. This in turn implies that any understanding between God and man must be on the basis of God's language. You see what I mean? It takes you deep into what prayer is. So I want to read it with you to help me finish it, because I need to finish it. There you go. So which one are you most excited to read? Let me go back again. Theology and Sanity by Frank Sheed. Journal et pensées de chaque jour, Elisabeth Lezer. The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene. The Quest for Shakespeare by Joseph Pierce. Histoire d'une âme by Sainte Thérèse, de l'Enfant de Jésus et de la Sainte Face. The Wife of Pilate by Gertrude von Lefort. The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Lost and Gained by John Henry Newman. 10 Ways to Destroy the Imagination of Your Child by Anthony Esolen. Kristin Lavransdatter, The Wreath by Sigrid Undset. Modern Saints by Anne Ball. Prayer by Hans Urs von Balthasar. Which one are you most excited to read? Oh my gosh, you can't even see me anymore. Which one are you most excited to read? Please comment down below. I would love to know. Are there any that I should have picked that I didn't pick and you wished I had picked? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know, Alexis, you could have picked better ones. I don't know. So I hope you are excited to read with me. I am so excited to read with you. Please sign up below. I would love to have you. Once a month, we will talk together about the book we just read, and perhaps this will help you put your phone down, stop listening to me, and read a book for Jesus, for God. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I shall see you in the next one. God bless.